Laura McSpadden here from Positive Force Movement in Rochester, New York. Today I'm going to talk about one very specific aspect of the barbell back squat. Grip placement. What are your hands and arms doing in the back squat? How do you get set up in that way, in a way that's going to be safe and that's going to help you have as effective and powerful and strong of a back squat as possible? So this is not a tutorial covering the entirety of the back squat. It's a very specific portion of your setup. What I'm going to do, it's going to be a little bit of story time. I'm going to look at what some of the world-renowned experts on barbell training have to say about this aspect of the barbell back squat. We're going to look at where they differ in opinion. We're going to look at what are the things, when they all agree on something, it's pretty darn important. And we're not going to compromise on those things. So where they're different, where they agree, and what implications that has for all of you on finding your safe and effective grip for your back squat. So I'm going to look first. This is Starting Strength by Rippetoe. Most people who are really serious into barbell training are familiar with what's in this text. Different coaches agree with it to different amounts. Nevertheless, it's a widely respected text, worth getting to know if you want to dive into some of the nuance of barbell training. So, what Rippetoe has to say, he is a big proponent of the thumbless grip. So, when you're in that, getting into that position, the thumbs are not wrapped around the bar. They are instead on top of the bar. He says that this is because the grip that results from thumbs around can create its own problems regarding too much gripping of the bar, trying to lift the weight with the arms, leading to some wrist and elbow pain. He talks about how in the correct position, the wrist is straight. It's not flexed or extended. None of the weight is over any part of the arm, wrist, or hand. All of the weight is on the back. He talks about how as grip width increases, upper back muscle tightness decreases, and therefore muscular support for the bar is diminished. He does also give a warning, though, about how if you get too close for your shoulder and thoracic mobility, that's going to develop a difficulty in keeping the chest up. So he says, chest up, arms positioned such that the wrists are straight in a thumbless grip, weight centered on the back. Talks about how if you have very differing shoulder mobilities, still have the bar centered on the back, but if you have very asymmetrical shoulders, you might have one arm further out, as long as the weight is centered skeletally. So what he's talking about here, I'm going to step over to the bar, is thumbless grip, ducking on the bar. I do low bar squatting, so getting into that position as narrow as you can, and then almost rotating that grip around so that the hands are a natural extension of the forearm without any hyperextension of the wrist or gripping around the bar. There are other experts who widely disagree. I was formerly a Strong First certified barbell instructor. You can read a post on my blog about why I stepped down in relation to a refusal to use gender-neutral pronouns on their blog when I was writing for it. But I learned a lot from the certification. So this is also Dr. Michael Hartle and Pavel Tsatsouline, really well-regarded strength coaches. They absolutely say in no uncertain terms, do not use a thumbless grip. The logic that they give for that is that when you have the thumbs around the bar, you can create more tension. There's less likely to be tension leaks. And you can become one with the bar and actually like almost arc the bar around, increasing chest opening and lat engagement. They don't go into, in any of the 3 SFL certifications that I've been to, how that may or may not impact elbow and wrist pain to insist upon a full grip, but they do talk about the safety aspect of control over the bar and connection with the bar. They also state grip the bar as narrowly as your shoulder and thoracic mobility and body dimensions allow. So this is consistent with Ripito. It's not saying as narrow as possible. It's as narrow as your shoulder and thoracic mobility allow. So there's a consistent point right there. Really emphasizing placing the bar on that shelf created by the rear deltoids and the trapezius muscles. They do not say everyone should low bar squat, but they do emphasize making sure that it is not so high that it's on the cervical spine. That's going to be unanimous as well. You do not want the bar pressing right on your neck. Good rule of thumb, if you have to use that pad that you'll see people wrap around the bar, chances are the bar is too high. That's want to have it be right on that trap delt shelf. They emphasize having your elbows back at approximately 7 o'clock and pulling the bar down with your lats as you stick your chest out hard. So lower bar placement than you might expect. Lats and chest very engaged. That's consistent. As narrow a grip as your mobility allows, that's consistent. What isn't so consistent is the stating a 7 o'clock position back and mandating thumbs around the bar. So what that's going to look like is a little bit more so you might notice here I have a little bit of wrist hyperextension. Not as much as you'll see some people with, but definitely more than what I had when demonstrating Ripito's grip setup. Then if we move on from there to Wendler's 531, this is a great simple program. If you want to get strong without a ton of extra fluff to your program, and it's a program where it makes sense for your body's limitations and abilities, absolutely, I'm a fan of it. So what Wendler here is saying, proper bar placement depends on your body type and what's most comfortable to you. Some people have shoulder problems and can't carry the bar very low. Others just plain suck at high bar squatting. Place the bar where it allows you to reach depth with good form. It's just that easy. I like taking a full grip on the bar. Remember, that's the thumbs around the bar. But I use a thumbs around grip, the Ripito type grip, for the first half of my squatting life. I don't see this as a deal breaker. Keep your elbows down and try to force them under the bar. This will cause your hips to drive first out of the bottom of the squat. It'll also keep your chest high and prevent you from squatting with your legs first. The first thing to shoot up with many people is their ass. Remedy this by pushing with your hips and keeping your elbows under the bar, or at least trying to. So that's where we have Wendler disagreeing with the strong first and Ripito, where he talks about you want to try to force the elbows under the bar, which doesn't care which grip, but he's saying have the arms more or less vertical, or at least try to, in order to create a situation where you're driving up primarily with the posterior chain instead of the quads. But other things that are similar, as you might note, chest high, you want to have your back engaged, and the grip width is going to be determined by what works best for your body. So of these folks who I'm going to be quoting in this video on back squatting, these are things that I would consider not up for debate. You want to be centered under the bar. You got to have your lats engaged and your chest open and up. And you want your grip to be as narrow as your mobility allows, and for the bar to be on your upper back, not your neck. Whether that's high bar or low bar will vary from person to person, both in terms of their mobility and their goals. So, but what's different, whether or not thumbs around is mandated, as Strong First is absolutely discouraged, as Rippetoe says, or as Wendler says, meh, not a deal breaker. As well as whether the arms should be vertical, further out, as Rippetoe says, or somewhere in between, as Strong First says. So those are things where I'm going to encourage people who, for whom barbell back squatting does make sense, to feel free to explore to a certain degree. You don't have your arms way out here. Have them as close as they can be, but then explore grip width, and elbow placement. That's something which you can look at the best of the best and they aren't agreeing on those things. You have to find what grip and grip width makes it most possible for you to be centered, for your lats to be engaged, for your chest to be open and up, and for you to be able to get to depth without creating wrist and elbow pain. Now, let's say you try all of those things and you're like, this still doesn't feel good. I have a couple other experts here. Dan John, this right here, Mass Made Simple, very possibly one of the hardest programs I have ever followed in my life. Yeah, this is something special. And towards the beginning of this, Dan John talks about a 6-week Squat 101 workout. So Dan John, this program has a lot of back squats in it. Dan John is not saying don't back squat at all. He very much encourages folks to back squat if they have goals of strength or hypertrophy, or muscle mass building. But he talks about first wanting to be able to do goblet squats. He gives the weight of 100 pounds, a 100-pound goblet squat with good form prior to embarking on any sort of high volume back squat program. I'm not going to go through the details of this whole program, just like I didn't go through the details of any of Rippetoe, Wendler's, or Strong First's programs. But if you are interested in following a program that is pretty much guaranteed to improve your squat mechanics, Dan John's 6-week, let me not misname it, 6-week Squat 101 program, I highly recommend. And then we have Michael Boyle, another well-regarded expert in the field. He basically talks about how, in regards to functional training, the front squat is going to be safer for most people than the back squat. He pretty much says that in no uncertain terms. I didn't mark this page, but I think I remember right where it is. Yes. Nearly a decade ago, I came to a conclusion. Athletes I trained would no longer perform the back squat. As a former powerlifter, this was hearsay. But I was tired of constantly asking our athletes to keep their heads up and to use their legs, not their backs. The emphasis of the back squat is always on increasing weight. Unfortunately, this is often done by altering technique to improve leverage, not by actually increasing the strength of the muscles so necessary to run or jump. The decision to discontinue back squats was based on logic that was unfortunately a long time overdue. Front squats are safer than back squats. And I am going to go ahead and say that as much as I am a fan of powerlifting, as much as I enjoy seeing how much I can lift with good form and safely and really push the limits in that way, I do agree with him to an extent. I think that back squats are the best squat variation for two groups of people, under the heading of people for whom back squatting safely with good mechanics is possible, there are two groups of people for which they are the best squat variation. People who are going to compete in the sport of powerlifting, for which the back squat is a required lift. And people who have lower body muscle gain as a goal. And for those of you who know my radical body positivity approach to this, I'm not talking about for vanity reasons. If there is some sort of safety related goal or gender affirming goal for which lower body hypertrophy makes sense. For almost everyone else, some sort of either unloaded or front loaded squat variation is going to be safer and every bit as effective for reaching goals. A lot of my students do goblet squats, Zercher squats, a traditional barbell front squat, whether here or here, double kettlebell front squats, lots of squat variations that are front loaded versus the rear loaded back squat for the very pragmatic purpose of let's maximize movement towards goals while minimizing risks. So those would be a whole other set of videos in terms of optimal grip placement for Zercher squat, barbell front squat, and different kettlebell squat variations. I'm not going to read everything to y'all about that. I just wanted to take some time to go over where the experts do and do not agree in regards to grip and hand placement for the barbell back squat, and also present some alternative views in regards to what to do if the barbell back squat just isn't working for you. Thanks so much. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave a message or shoot me a private email. Take care. Bye-bye.